Quick recap of Boots Ennis' victory over Eimantas Stanionis. I don't think this was a surprise to any of us. Boots Ennis just put on an absolutely dominant performance. He looked really focused, so I got to give him props for that because that was one of my questions prior to the fight. Boots remained focused and disciplined throughout the contest. He didn't, stop and complain and clinch and complain to the referee as he did in some of his previous fights. He started the fight out by just establishing his jab, and I really like the variety of jabs that Boots throws. He'll throw feint jabs, double jabs. He'll vary the target within the same sequence. So in other words, he'll go to the head and the body or the body and the head. This just really helps him set his own distance and rhythm and get a measuring stick on his opponent. Now, while Jaron is able to switch stances very fluidly, he mostly either stuck to staying righty or staying lefty for the majority of the rounds. In other words, he didn't constantly switch back and forth multiple times throughout the rounds. Jaron also used his very fluid footwork to deftly move in and out of Stanionis' forward march. That allowed Jaron to set the angles he was looking for and fire off his rapid combinations. As the fight wore on, Jaron started to open up more variety than his jab right hand. He started dropping in short little uppercuts, and then starting in the middle rounds, Jaron really started to open up with his body shots, which is where I think that's what did the damage to Stanionis. I think it was off a body shot that Stanionis took a knee. Subsequently, following that round, Stanionis' corner, Marvin Somodio, who's Freddie Roach's right-hand trainer, assistant trainer, Somodio chose to stop the fight. So technically speaking, it's a RTD, like retired, as opposed to a TKO or a KO, but it is what it is. It's a stoppage victory for Jaron, and he was completely dominant. Now, to Stanionis' credit, he did come in with a decent game plan for him, given his skill set. I mentioned in the pre-fight breakdown that my concern for Stanionis is that he throws one hard punch at a time, whether it's a single jab, single right hand, or hook. He throws more single punches than he does combinations, and that's really a recipe for getting counterpunched by somebody as skillful as Jaron Boots Ennis. So what it looks like Stanionis worked on in camp was to level change, to avoid a punch, and then come back with his hard single shot to the head. That to me is a very reasonable game plan to devise, because you're not going to change Stanionis into this rapid fire combination hitter in one camp. You're also not going to get Stanionis to do a lot of side to side upper body movement and be able to slip punches really closely, because that's a skill set that takes much longer than a couple months to develop. But what you can do is just get him to drop and bend his knees, right? To level change. That doesn't take a lot of time to develop that skill set. And in fact, when Stanionis did do that, when he bobbed down and then threw a hard punch to Jaron's head, that's when he did have his success. But given his style of defense, which is the double high guard to shell up and kind of come forward, wait for the other person to stop punching, and then he'll punch, that's not going to work against somebody, again, who's as skillful as Jaron, who can simply time the march forward or the punch and then move off to the side, either angle, with his excellent footwork. Now, while I was impressed with Jaron Boots Ennis' performance, and that's why we chose to do a live, that's why I chose to do a breakdown, pre-fight breakdown, because I consider Jaron must-see boxing TV. Nevertheless, this fight is also more evidence of what Dana White was referring to when he says boxing is broken. Let me ask you this, before this fight, have you ever heard of Eimantas Stanionis from Lithuania? I hadn't. And that's no disrespect to him. I don't want to take away from the fact that he held that world title. He did what every boxer is supposed to do. You're supposed to go after a belt. He did that. He won it. So we can't take that away from him. But that's not what Dana White's pointing at. He's pointing at this power structure that's set things up. So there are just so many world champions. There's so many interim belts, minor belts. Everybody's got a belt. But by diluting things like that, that means that very few of these world champions actually have name recognition. Now, clearly, Jaron Boots Ennis is one of the chosen ones. So the power structure of boxing will do everything they can to ensure that his name stays out there, his face stays out there, and he keeps winning. In a sense, Stanionis is the perfect opponent for somebody like Jaron, because Stanionis just maintains that march forward. He's a puncher, but he's not a combination puncher. That plays in perfectly to Jaron's switch hitting, fluid style with lots of rapid fire combinations to counter. Now, the only potentially disappointing thing about this is that as good as Jaron Boots Ennis is, will the boxing powers that be match him in a tougher fight or tougher fights? Will they allow a potential individual, an individual with the potential to be more competitive with Boots to get in the ring with him? They have to at some point, or maybe they don't. Are they just going to protect their investment in Boots Ennis and just continue to feed him opponents that feed into his style perfectly? Other folks are saying, oh, he should just move up to 154. Well, no, you don't just jump up a weight division for the heck of it. The reason fighters move up a weight division is that their body just will no longer allow them to cut weight to the specific weight division that they've been competing in. That's a super dangerous proposal, probably from a keyboard warrior. If Jaron is actually having a great deal of difficulty making 147, then yes, 154 is a consideration. But if I were in his camp, and since he's such a shot caller, I would do a couple of catch weight fights somewhere between 47 and 54 first, just to ease your way into 154. You can't just call out two great fighters in adjacent weight divisions and say they should fight, like Boots Ennis and Terrence Crawford. That absolutely makes no sense. It also makes no sense for somebody like Boots Ennis to go for the very top of the next weight division above him. Again, you got to ease into that new weight division if and when he decides to move up to 154. Also, if you enjoy boxing conversations, please join our community by hitting the join button and become a member of the channel. You will get early access to a lot of the content and priority in terms of replies in the comments. Thank you for listening. I'll see you the next time.